The Inbetweeners TV series review. So this is part of what I'm calling my television addiction series, in which I go through and I talk about all the TV shows I watched in 2011 and 2012 when I was living in Cambodia and was watching way too much TV. For more information on exactly what this series is and why I'm doing it, you can check the video and the link in the description down below. But for today, The Inbetweeners. So this is somewhat similar maybe in spirit to the show I reviewed in the previous video, which was Peep Show. Both of them are British TV shows. Both of them have an enthusiastic following. And both of them are based off of cringe humor. And again, as I talked about in my review of Peep Show, I think this is a difference, broadly speaking, between British TV shows and American TV shows. An American sitcom like Friends or How I Met Your Mother is based on a lot of kind of zingy one-liners or kind of a setup joke, whereas the British TV shows are quite often based on just really cringy situations where you get these characters in the most embarrassing situations possible and then you just tighten the cringe. So that as you're watching it, you're kind of almost watching it like this, like you feel vicariously embarrassed for these characters. Almost difficult to watch, and yet you can't pull yourself away. Peep Show, I mentioned, even though it's a British show, it was an American friend who got me into it. But The Inbetweeners is something I found via my British colleagues. They were talking about what a great show it was and how much they liked it and what a great show it was about kind of being a teenager and being at high school. And so I checked it out based on their recommendation, although I do understand that there are a number of American fans of this show as well. I think they tried to make an American version which completely flopped. I don't know why they have to make American versions out of everything. I mean, why not just show the British version on them? Okay, that's another rant for another day. Talking today about Inbetweeners. So, yeah, similar to Peep Show in the sense that it's cringe humor, but it's talking about high schoolers in this sense. It's a group of 4 boys, and the name Inbetweeners, I believe, is meant to refer to the fact that they're neither the super popular crowd, nor are they the geeks. They're kind of in that weird in-between phase of high school social strata, where they're not quite at the bottom level, but they're not quite at the top level, and they're trying to become more popular, but they're stuck just in between. I think that's what the name refers to. I don't believe that's ever explicitly referenced in the show. Like they never say, well, look at us, the Inbetweeners. As far as memory serves, it was a good 7 years ago now that I watched this show. But I think that's what you're meant to infer from it. So a lot of cringe humor. I didn't like this one as well as Peep Show for a couple of reasons. One is it was a little bit more crude. And I mean, fair enough, it's about teenage boys, so I guess it does accurately mimic the way teenage boys talk. As American, you have to get used to the British slang, but once you do that, the fact that every conversation is about sex, well, that's about right, isn't it? That's the way teenage boys do talk. But it's a bit crude, and not only the conversations, but some of the situations they find themselves in. Humor revolves around body fluids of various kinds. I don't want to say too much more than that for a video of this type. So that put me off a little bit, as well as the fact that I said with Peep Show, the cringe was a bit unrealistic. I think maybe that's even more true of The Inbetweeners. Well, it's on an episode-by-episode basis, because come to think of it, some of Peep Show's episodes could get really ridiculous as well. But I thought that on average, The Inbetweeners, the premises and the way the situations kept escalating, felt like it was more unrealistic in the Inbetweeners. Maybe I'm going to have to go back and rewatch both shows before I make a definitive judgment. And yet, despite the fact that I felt it was a little bit too much, I watched the whole series anyways. There are 3 seasons, or 3 series, I think they call it in British TV, and I watched all 3. I found it, well, this is my television addiction series, which I talk about how I was unable to pull myself away from the TV, even though I hated myself for it, and I knew what I was watching was sometimes subpar. But it is watchable. It is. I mean, you are kind of going like, oh, all right, this is getting a little bit ridiculous, but it is watchable, and I watched it. I was trying to refresh my memory before filming this video, and I was watching a few other YouTuber reviews. Quite a number of people, British as well as Americans, say they really liked it because it reminded them of their own high school days. This was not my high school experience. I had a very boring high school experience. I didn't have a lot of friends. I kind of stayed home most weekends, etc. That appears to be what a lot of the fondness for this TV show is, and I didn't have a lot of my own high school nostalgia to draw on, and yet it is very easy to recognize each of these characters as people you could easily meet in a high school setting, even if you don't have those memories yourself. So the characters are kind of, at least in the broad strokes, very spot on for the teenage boys they're supposed to represent. The individual situations may be a little bit far-fetched, but if you like the good British cringe humor, there's plenty of it here. It's entirely watchable. That's my review.